Welcome to a special two-part series of The Amalgamation, sponsored by the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship and the Palestine Justice Network of the Presbyterian Church USA, where I hang out with three friends and colleagues, Cece Armstrong, Tony Larson, and Jihyun Oh, to share and reflect on our recent experiences in Palestine. Cece Armstrong is one of the pastors at St. James Presbyterian Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and one of the current co-moderators of the Presbyterian Church USA. Cece has served in a number of leadership positions, including serving as co-moderator of the National Association of Presbyterian Clergywomen and writing for Presbyterian Today magazine and the Presbyterian Outlook. Tony Larson is the pastor at Trinity Presbyterian Church in Surfside, South Carolina, and makes up the other half of the Presbyterian Church USA co-moderator team with Cece. Tony has served in a number of capacities in the church, including co-leading the Synod Youth Council for the Synod of the Mid-Atlantic and being a member of the planning team for Montreat Youth Conference. And finally, the Reverend Jihyun Oh. Since the summer of 2024, she has been the stated clerk of the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church USA. And because she doesn't have enough to do, she also serves as the executive director of the Interim Unified Agency. She is the first Korean American to serve in the denomination's highest office, and only the second woman and the first woman of color elected to lead the Peace USA in its more than 300-year history. Take my word for it, in the Presbyterian world, these three are a big deal, and I'm so grateful they took some time to share their experiences in Palestine with me. A note for you non-Presbyterians in the house, while all four of us are ordained ministers in the Presbyterian Church USA, and we do let our PresbyNerd flag fly a couple of times, you don't need to be Presbyterian to get something from our conversation. Thanks for spending time with the Amalgamation, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Cece Armstrong, Tony Larson, and Jihyun Oh. My name is Bruce Reyes-Chow, and you found the Amalgamation Podcast. Each episode, I chat with inspiring humans, activists, artists, academics, and adventurers as we joyfully and courageously co-conspire to make the world a more loving, compassionate, and just home for everyone. Welcome to the Amalgamation. All right, welcome all. So glad you could join this podcast. This is a little bit of a special series we're doing, just a two-parter, because the four of us on this have recently traveled to Palestine with their delegations. And so we wanted to share a little bit about that experience, questions we had, important things that we think you should know, and just give our reflections as humans, as church leaders, as people of faith. It's important to know we are recording this on, I'm looking at my watch. It is Thursday, March 5th. We are about a week into the United States attack on Iran. And so we are in the middle of a war right now. And so that is the context in which we are doing this. We also know that genocide continues to happen in Gaza. Occupation continues to happen. Apartheid continues to be the case. So we wanted to do this not to say that other things in the world are not important right now, but to just remember that there's lots of things going on, and we all shared an experience together in Palestine. So that's what we're doing. But first, you've already heard all the official bios. So I'm going to ask these folks to introduce themselves really quickly and tell us just a few things that are important to know about them right now. So I'm going to go with Jihyun. If you would go first, introduce yourself and tell us what's important to know about you.
Sure. Jihyun Oh. I am currently serving as a stated clerk of the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church USA and the executive director of the Interim Unified Agency, which hopefully will have a new name soon, hopefully within weeks.
I choose Fred. I just want to call it Fred.
Yes.
How about that?
You could call it Fred. I am also fairly newlywed for the last year or so, so approaching my first anniversary. And so that's another thing that's sort of in my life. And my brother is in New York about to open a brand new restaurant. And so looking forward to that.
Yes. Awesome. That's exciting. One of my kids is moving to New York.
Oh, really?
Soon. So, yeah. But she's poor though, so she probably can't afford your brother's restaurant would be my guess. Anyway, all right, Tony, if you would introduce yourself and give us a few things that are important to know about you.
Sure. Tony Larson, pastor at Trinity Presbyterian Church in Surfside Beach, South Carolina, where it was getting into the 70s here today. So we're starting to feel a little bit of spring, and the pollen is on its way. I'm enjoying being home for a week in between doing this work with Cece of circulating throughout the church. And so I think there's not time for much else other than pastoring and co-moderating. The occasional trip to the bar to still play trivia with my Rogue Rev trivia team, but it's all good stuff. And I guess the most important thing now is I have to remember where I'm going to be next week for the next 15 days, because it's Florida, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Virginia with Cece for about 10 hours, and then Louisville, Albuquerque, home. And so if I can just keep track of where I am when I am, we'll be doing good.
Do you ever wake up in a hotel room and forget where you are?
That, or when you do multiple hotel rooms back to back, it's very important you keep the key in the little thing that has the room number on it, so you don't just wander back to the number you remembered from the day before.
I have done that where I've been on the wrong floor, and I'm like, I could have sworn I was in 218, and I'm like, oh, no, that was last week.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Classy. That's dangerous also, apparently, if you're just wandering into random people's rooms. Cece, introduce yourself and what's important to know about you these days.
Cece Armstrong, associate pastor at St. James Presbyterian Church in Charleston, South Carolina, on the lovely James Island. And also doing this work with Tony allows me to be gone more times than not. I counted in January 8 nights that I slept in my own bed. 8 nights, the whole month. It's exciting. And I actually I lost a night because we got snowed in somewhere and I couldn't come back home. So at any rate, the good news that happened on my front porch just a few days ago, I discovered there is a nest on my reef on my door.
Oh.
My front door of my house in the reef that hangs.
That is awesome.
And at first, you cannot see it from the road. You don't know it's there. I heard chirping and I thought, wow, the birds are really thinking it's spring because, of course, it got really warm here. And then I discovered there's a nest. And then in an effort to try to figure out what exactly was going on, I used my camera and found 4 eggs are in the nest.
So are you nervous about opening your front door now?
Yes, we're not leaving through the front door. Right. So, and that's what I thought. I thought maybe the reason it was there is because I don't use the front door often. I'm in and out of the garage a lot. And so that's another door to the home. And so maybe that's why the birds felt comfortable to just make that their home. And someone else gave me a sense of peace and said, no, it's because the birds feel safe in your presence. There you go. So I'm trying to hang on to that, other than they thought my house was abandoned and they'd moved in since I'm never here.
Well, the amount that the three of you travel, that people might think your houses are abandoned. The way that goes. For those of you that are not Presbyterian, so Presbyterians are like, oh my gosh, we got all three of these folks on board. Yep. For those of you that are not Presbyterian, all three of these folks, these humans right now, not only are friends of mine, but they're a big deal, just so you know. It's this particular moment in the life of our church to have the three of them on to just talk about a particular experience, but also just for you all to get to know them a little bit as humans. Really excited. So thank you all for being on the podcast. Really excited. We also want to thank, you've heard in the intro, that Presbyterian Peace Fellowship and the Palestine Justice Network are helping to sponsor these 2 episodes, the first sponsors of this podcast, by the way. And so we're pretty excited and grateful for their helping to make this happen. But let's just start talking about our particular delegations. And let's just talk about your particular delegation. So Tony, Cece, and I were all on the same one. So Tony, why don't you give your version of what we did, of your delegation, and what was it about? Why did we go?
Sure. Well, it was well, you were our leader, and it was a sort of, I guess we had hoped, we had intended to try to get Presbyterian leaders to go, and we got some Presbyterian leaders, and we got some other Presbyterians who are just members, or some even a couple of Presbyterian adjacent people, but all folks who felt moved by their faith to want to go and to see and to understand what's happening in the place, to understand the historic roots of Christianity from being in the physical space, but also to meet the people and build some relationships with the folks who are living in this context on a daily basis.
Great. Cece, that's good. Anything to add? I'm trying to think of,
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a real good summation of who we are, who we were in that process, and also had a chance to meet with partners that gave us insight. I felt like I was getting insider information. The media portrays one thing, but our trip there was more of an insider's edition. And I felt privileged in that respect and honored and humbled that folks were comfortable sharing their stories with us.
Yes. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. We went, our group was about 18 people, Presbyterian or Presbyterian adjacent. Some had left the Presbyterian church and then kind of found their way. And actually, this was an experience that was actually brought them a little closer back to that with them. We went with Sabil, which is a Palestinian Christian liberation organization, super well respected in that area, which is why we got to meet with the people that we were able to meet with. And so giving us some insight and felt like behind the scenes and meeting with people that we might not otherwise get to meet with. So grateful for their support of that. Jill, what was your trip about? Yours is a little different.
Yeah, so part of the reason why we made the trip, it was a group of folks from the Interim Unified Agency in a variety of capacities. A couple of folks who are global ecumenical liaisons in that region, working with partners who had been working with partners for a couple of decades, building relationships and supporting ministries and learning about and connecting them to resources and relationships within the Peace USA. There was one person who is the representative for the Peace USA at the UN, who went along, the ecumenical and interreligious relations person who also was part of the group. And so there was a group of folks who actually had are holding a variety of relational and advocacy roles on behalf of the General Assembly of the Peace USA who went. And we were there because our partners had really wanted our presence on the ground to, and they felt like it was really important for us to visit, to be a good reminder that they are not alone in their fight for liberation and their struggle to be free, to continue to work for justice. And so that was part of it, was to be with them and to offer witness as well as witness alongside of them. And to also hear the stories of important and amazing ministry that they're doing, and to listen as they share with us how we can be better partners with them in the upcoming months and years. And so that was a really important part of the visit. And another part was actually attending and being part of the installation of the new presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan in the Holy Land.
That.
It was a really big Lutheran gathering where there were like a handful of us who were not Lutheran who actually got to be part of it. But really just an amazing celebration in the midst of a lot of difficulty. And to be able to celebrate that in an ecumenical way was really important as well.
Cool. Yeah, I loved seeing the images that you all were sharing. Jihyun, have you been there before?
No, that's my first time.
This is your first time? Yeah. Right. And Cece and Tony, this was your first time.
First time.
Yeah. What was it like being there for the first time? And what did things meet your expectations? Were there surprises? I mean, I know that when we take people over for the first time, there's a lot of different reactions. But Tony, what was it like to be there for the first time? Your first reactions?
I mean, so there's parts of it that are just amazing, and to have that sort of sense. And then I learned about myself that at a certain point, the theoretical "this maybe happened here" just doesn't do that much for me. So trying to engage in some of those walks, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is beautiful in its own way, but there's also just a bit that doesn't connect well with my spirituality. And I just remember when we walked to the tomb of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and it is way down deep in the ground. And I just had this reaction that like at the resurrection, she is not walking up those stairs. She's saying, Jesus, you got to come carry your mother up these stairs. Like, why did you put me this far underground? So there was that aspect, but also it driving around the country, once you sort of accommodate to the actual visible signs of apartheid, there is a lot of beauty there, and to have a sense of the food, the people, the culture, and the spirit of the Palestinian people is one thing. I guess the other big impression I left with was just how tense the whole city of Jerusalem felt. There just felt to be, everybody was anxious and tense.
Yeah. Jihyun, first time, well, any initial reactions there the first time?
Yeah, so I think I really echo and resonate with that tension that was everywhere. I think that sense of always being surveilled, always sort of needing to be careful. And, we were like Americans, right? And still feeling that. And for folks who are actually the subject of that surveillance, I think wondering about that heightened level of awareness all the time that people have to live with. I think that was something that just felt really like it. I felt it, right? Really deeply. The beauty, I think, too, also for me was really striking in terms of the geography itself, even though it's right there. There's a lot of rainfall, but there's something really beautiful about that, the geography there. It's sort of a silly thing that I was like, oh my gosh, like why did I not know about this? Was actually the mint tea. The first time we went into a restaurant and we wanted tea, and they brought it out with like a tea bag on the side and then like a whole sprig of mint in the middle, or in the hot water. And it was amazingly delicious. And I thought, like, why had I never thought about using my excess mint this way? But it was really that sort of sense of freshness of the food. And in spite of some of the challenges agriculturally and the challenge of growing food there, that there was still this amazing freshness of food and really an abundance, right, of the tables that were set there. And so that was also really striking, that there was all these sort of juxtaposition of things in that context. And also, I was really struck by, like, in conversations with people, really the love and generosity of folks who are living under a lot of pressure and a lot of challenge in a state of apartheid and in a state of actually, right, being under occupation, and still having a real sense of generosity, not just, to folks like us they're saying, come and see, right, and experience and go tell then what is happening, but also as they're talking about why for them actually the work that they're doing is important, is really about also inviting those who are oppressing them to a more fuller human way of being. Right. And that sort of sense of recovery and that sort of speaking truth to power as an act of love that I thought was really striking.
Yep. Thanks. Cece, what about you? First time?
First time being there. And I think what overwhelmed me upon arrival to Jerusalem was the overemphasis of Christmas.
No, that's right. Yeah, we went right before Christmas, y'all. So it was
super Christmas. It was it was like Santa Claus, super.
Well, and for those of you, if you're thinking about timeline, right, they had not had Christmas for 3 years, right? So it was all rushing back. But yes, sorry, keep going.
It was Christmas everywhere, and not necessarily the let's just await Jesus's birth. It was everything. It seemed like every culture of understanding Christmas was on display. So there was a bazaar, there were songs, there were people singing continuously. There was tons of that was going on. And so that caught my attention because all of that was flashy. But I also had some encounter upon arrival that will probably be one of my telling stories for the rest of my life. Having been searched upon entering, and then having to be strip searched because, and for whatever reason that was necessary, it happened. I was not ready for it, startled me. But then I also found out that my resilience comes back with flattery. And so sure enough, one of the guards looked at my ID and looked at my age and then said, "You don't look this age at all." And I kind of erased all that, negativity that went along with being strip searched. But I think one of the things that was also a misconception is you would think that in environments where there's so much oppression is that hope would diminish rather quickly and fast. And one of the encounters we had, the question was, so do you have hope, or where's your hope in this? And the response blew my mind. The response was a stern, "I'm Christian. Why wouldn't I have hope?" And then after the response of that, informed all of us that if anyone lacks hope in this experience, then they probably need to change their religion. And so that was kind of in your face, hit them hard and deal with the consequences. But I also ran some parallels with the oppression of the United States, especially during Jim Crow laws and the enslavement of Africans. During that, I could see and feel that tension that exists in those spaces and places. And I had not anticipated that. So that was kind of new to run into, to be in an environment where it was seemingly obvious or somewhat obvious that this type of collection for oppression repeats itself in varied places.
And cycles of teaching each other how to do it, right?
Yes.
I mean, the sharing of oppression knowledge that goes back and forth, and we see on our own streets during protests that, learned from the state of Israel. And I mean, I think that part, I think for me, when I first went, I went in 2015 or something, for me, it became, the intellectual just became not important to me anymore. It's like, we can have these intellectual arguments, but this is no longer a debate for me. And I think denominationally, we were still, can we use the word apartheid? What, is that too strong? And then you get there and you're like, well, no, that's not too strong. That is what this is.
Right.
And I think that was, for me, when I first went, that was the big, there was that. And then there was always this, every time I go back still, and I get the privilege of going back a couple times now, is that you could be having a iced vanilla latte in one space and then an hour later talking to a political prisoner, and that life of kind of holding those two spaces is just life. And it seems like it would just be exhausting. You could just we just get a glimpse of having to do that kind of whiplash, but imagining what it's like to live under that for generations. I mean, I moved every time that folks still have so much grace and hospitality and welcome living under that. It just, anyways, that is mine about the first time. I think it's important for people to go. It is one of those things that sometimes folks will say, well, it's not why should we go? Almost like, what's the big deal? So what would you say to somebody who says, well, why even go there? Like, why is it important for us to even be there? And anybody could just go on and answer. We'll just free flow now.
Well, one of the things I think made this much more important is to see with your own eyes and to experience what was there. It's valuable and important to understand what it looks like for people to treat others inhumanely. You don't know what you don't know until you're in the midst of it happening. Some of the experiences that were shared with us, that just not treating a human like a human. But you won't see that in the media. You won't see that, you won't see the humanity of people. You won't see the humanity of Palestine, the Palestinian people, until you are in the midst of, wait, this is their property, and this fence and this line and this surveillance, that the water system went over one whole area in order to give water to someone else, but not them. Like to see that. And then for those in that space and place to say, well, this is kind of the normal treatment.
Yep.
You have to see that to understand that can't be normal. And yet this exists.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Others, if folks are going to say, well, why should we go over there? Why visit? Why be part of a delegation? What do we have to say?
So I would say, for me, I think, right, one of the things is, our Palestinian siblings, Christian siblings in particular, are saying, come and see, right? Come and see.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to come and see what it's like here, and then to go and tell and share. And so I think that part of being in relationship with them and actually answering that invitation is really important. I think another piece for me was sort of this recognition that I, was growing up, was told a thing about Jerusalem, and especially right where the cradle, like the really important holy place for, the three Abrahamic religions, and how this was really shared space. And actually now going in this part of this delegation, recognizing, oh, that is actually not the reality. That might have been at one point, but it's not the reality now. And so there's sort of this outdated knowledge I think I had been carrying even about what Jerusalem was like, and what that sort of sense of shared holy space was like. And so I think that part of just sort of that being able to actually see and know and feel differently, I think too, was really important. For me, I think an invitation to Koreans in particular, I think, would be for folks to go and experience and hear the stories, for me, that were really reminiscent of hearing about the Japanese occupation. Growing up, and my family, where I have older relatives who were alive and school age and beyond, and during the occupation, and to think about what that's like for folks to have done so in the Korean, the Japanese occupation of Korea for 35 years, and to imagine that it's more than double that length of time that folks have been living in Palestine and in a particular state like that. I think there was that moment where of like, oh, wow, like this really is that sort of, right, another parallel experience of a people, right, in that similar situation. And so I think that's really important. I heard a Korean pastor say to me at one point, I feel like as a Korean, I really should be standing with Palestinians, but I think from like a theological standpoint, I really struggle. And I would invite anybody who's feeling that way to go and experience that reality and that sort of shared human experience. Yeah.
I think that's for me too, is I think the invitation is so important, because I think that there are places that I wouldn't go visit because I haven't been invited, and it feels a little saviorism-ish, where you're going to go over and like, I'm going to go and learn about you and all these kind of things without the invitation. I think that for me is really important. And then the other thing that just pisses me off is that Christians have helped to create so much of what's going on now that I feel like it's almost my duty to be a different kind of Christian, to learn, to share. And what makes even more mad is my tax dollars are going to everything that's happening there. And you think about what's all the oppression that's happening. And every time I look at a camera or see a weapon, I'm like, you're welcome. I paid for that. Right. I mean, it's just this, so that like when people will say, well, you don't go to so-and-so, you don't go there. I'm like, well, this is a particular context that I think draws, I know for me, to be there for a particular reason that's different than other places. So yeah. Tony, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would echo some of that the one reason to go in person is that it allows you to see the empire that we're a part of from the outside, from the way that it does imperial things and that look harmful, and because our tax dollars, our influence is so present there, particularly in ways that are harmful to Palestinian people, but also just harmful to relations between the various people that live there. The presence of Americans there who have come with an openness to hearing, who have come out of a desire to be in solidarity, is it was clearly important to the people that we talked to, that they had an opportunity to share with us, and you can do some of that, is possible through technology, but it's not the same as being able to be in the room, to receive the hospitality of tea and to listen to people, in some instances, tell you some of the worst things that have happened in their life, and be able to just receive that with empathy and prayer in the moment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, sitting in a trailer, being served coffee, but talking about how settlers are infringing on people's land and people murdered and all this. It's surreal, but it's important for us to hear that we've played a part in that. Like, it just makes it so like, yeah, we're part of this. And the fact that they're saying yes and still come because we know you might be different.
Right.
And so just really, really welcome that. Were there any particular things that happened or something particular that you saw that either moved you, angered, gave you hope? Was there any of the people you met or the places you visited that particularly strike you can think of right now?
One of the things that warmed my heart the most are the children. And we met babies, and they weren't infants. They were toddlers or really young people. And even though they may not have known what their environment really was on the larger scale, they were still sweet, innocent children who welcomed play as a form of even resistance in that space. I refuse to call names and get everything wrong, but where we were, we had an opportunity there were a few children, maybe 5, 6 years old, maybe younger even, but they were playing and climbing on some of the fencing in the space that was there. And though our language barrier seemingly happened for me, play was still optional for them. And for me, that's where I kept feeling like even growing up in the midst of this, you still have the innocence of this life that allows you to just be in the presence. And so that gave me hope when on the very last day we were there, I got to be a tourist in my head, a tourist for about 4 hours. So I rode a camel, and then
there is evidence of this on the interweb somewhere.
Yes. And then I also got a chance to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and there I was taking pictures of all of the beautiful grounds that were there. And right below me, there was a leaf. Now the leaf was good and no longer green. I mean, it was a leaf that had fallen. But for some reason, I felt compelled to hang on to that leaf to say, this fell from a tree that my understanding of Christ may have walked by.
Yeah.
And at some point, that was some hope for me to hang on to.
And with olive trees that are older than our country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's others. Any particular people, things you saw, people you met with, organizations that strike you, right, that you want to lift up?
So meaningful in a variety of ways. The understanding that I did not have, that the majority of Muslims are not allowed onto the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, that they're denied access to that holy site, was just frankly enraging, and then to be in a space with a man sharing his passion for traditional garments and dance, and for him to just blurt out, "Oh, I'm sorry about the tear gas," but it just happens, and the children are used to it, and so it doesn't even faze them anymore, right? How do you don't forget that? And then this moment that we had, and Bruce, I can't remember the name of the peace activist that we visited in Hebron, but we went to his house.
Yeah, Cece Armstrong.
Thank you. And then we were going to go for a walk to the market, and we ended up at a checkpoint. And it seems like because he was with us, they weren't going to let us through. And so here are these 18 Presbyterians or Presbyterian adjacent people standing in this corridor at this checkpoint, and we have these 2 Palestinians with us, and one of them is bellowing at the guards, and we've just been told that there's this AI powered machine gun up above our heads, and our other Palestinian guy is having us play Simon Says there, and it was just this surreal moment of like the the anger and then the response being, well, let's just play Simon Says and try to demonstrate how silly this all is, in a moment where it felt very uncomfortable and very tense. And then we ended up having to walk back through this market to get out another way. And just the daily grind of that, the reality that, as many documentaries and things that I'd read to try to prepare the proximity of an outpost at the Tent of Nations, and just the knowledge that pressure is just going to keep coming, that there is every opportunity to further encroach, to take, to incapacitate, to cut off, is being utilized, and that it's a daily struggle. There is no space, and then to walk by that separation wall in Bethlehem and see the art there that is giving voice to the anger, but also to this persistent hope. And so there's just so many meaningful moments that have just transformed the way I think about what daily life is like there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that Tent of Nations is one of those that strikes me. I think every delegation I go on, we go there. It's one of the most well-known places, but to watch how the settler buildings are creeping up every time we go, like it's right there, and you begin to, roads are blocked off, going there. For those of you if those are listening that eventually get there, you get to live driving through the ways in which Palestinians have to travel, which means it's not direct. It's cut off. There are some roads that are for settlers and other ones that are for Palestinians, and settlers can close off roads whenever they want. And it's just, when you talk about apartheid, that's what it is. It's just different rules for different people. And then you get up there and the houses they want that land. And Tent of Nations, we'll put some links in the show notes for that, are just continuing to be present. So one of the reasons we should be there, right? International presence still matters. So yeah. So Jihyun, your trip, well, I will say our trip too, Jihyun, we were super cold most of the time too. We went in December, and I'm not going back in December. I'm just going to say that. No more delegations in December because it's too cold for me. Anyway, Jihyun, what about you? What were the meaningful people, organizations, things that you ran into?
Yeah. Well, and we were also there in the winter time, right, in January, and it was actually quite chilly at different times, right? I was really hopeful, even though I think some of the organizations would say that they are struggling with hope. The Israeli organizations who are working for Palestinian justice and rights, and meeting with them, organizations like Hamoked who are doing family unification, helping to track down people who have been detained or disappeared, who are actually working on the legal side of things. As I was listening, I think sort of, echoing a little bit of what you were saying, Bruce, about, like they share knowledge, right? And they share techniques and processes, right? Surely, I kept thinking there are too many parallels here, right? There must be some sort of playbook, right?
Yes.
And right, I think these organizations, these Israeli organizations, these Palestinian organizations that are actually continuing to work toward justice and to work towards freedom and wholeness for all folks, especially for Palestinians who have been living under this occupation for so long. I think even though they felt like at times they were struggling with sort of finding that space of hopefulness as they're watching more people immigrating out, for example, and the folks who might actually be part of the resistance actually leaving the region, that the fact that they have persisted in their work and they continue on, that faithfulness, I think, was something that I really had a lot of hope in. And also that sense of, you all could teach us some things about how to do this for the long haul and continue to persist and resist, right? To continue to do this work, even when it feels like you've been doing it so long and it feels like there's not the sort of impact maybe as fast as we might want it. But that's sort of perseverance, I think, is something that we can learn from those organizations. And so I think I felt really hopeful about that. I was really struck by Anar. It's a bunch of actually therapists who formed this nonprofit to do empowerment and equipping of leaders that they identify in the various communities to do mental health and care, right? Therapeutic sort of care of one another with oversight of these therapists who are trained. And they were about to launch a new program into Gaza. And so they have been working in the Bethlehem area and the surround and a few other areas in the West Bank. And they were about to launch something in Gaza, identifying leaders to do that work just because of the mass trauma that folks are experiencing and the need to do right trauma recovery and healing and restoration as part of that. And the quiet, grounded, I think, gentle presence and yet so strong, right, and resilient faith and faithfulness of the executive director and the folks who are involved in that work at UNAR was also really quite striking for me. There was a trip that we took to one of the sites where we had to do a couple of checkpoints to get to the mosque side of things and then to the sort of synagogue, right, and to sort of go back and forth. And there was a lot of military presence there, young people who were in military service. And I watched them walk by and I had seen one of them interact with our tour guide Palestinian tour guide who was there and also with us, telling us that we couldn't stand on a particular point in the sidewalk and for us to move because we couldn't stand there. And we're like, we're just waiting to go into the mosque. Like, we're just here waiting, right, for somebody to use the bathroom and come back. And we're told we couldn't stand there. She spoke really quite harshly to her Palestinian guide. And as I was watching a group of young people who were in their military gear and walking alongside, I thought, wow, like if you spend a couple of years being formed to be able to talk to whoever, right, the Palestinians, in a particular way, and you are given that sense of power over them.
Yeah.
Right? That's a really strong formation that you're going through at that particular age. And that can actually shape how you interact, right, for a really long time, right? Either that or that, like I was at that point, I think I also heard about the suicide rate among, right, Israeli young people who had actually gone through military service. And because of the things that they had seen, because of the things that they had experienced, that suicide rate was also quite high.
Yeah.
I was really struck by that.
Great. Thank you. I mean, I want to ask you about a few things that you might have seen, just to give some folks who haven't been and may think about going, but just as your experience. So let's talk about the military presence. You know, is there anything that struck you about that interactions that you, or just reactions to things? I mean, we were pretty clear with our delegation, no interacting. Like, this is not our time to try to make friends. We do not interact. And I've gone on delegations where people didn't listen to that, but we really tried to do that. But for you all, what were your reactions, your experiences with the military as you saw that?
I just remember being the afternoon that we, Cece got on the camel and we had our tourist day, and we walked down from the Mount of Olives and followed Via de la Rosa, and then we got back into the old city and we're walking past shops and whatever, and I think, was it pomegranate juice? Stopped to get that. And then I turned around and there were 4 soldiers who had just decided to pick a Palestinian man out from the crowd and just begin to search him and interrogate him right there in public. And it was, most people were just walking by like, there's nothing to see here. Mm-hmm. And to me, there was an intensity and a rising tension there that said, no, there's really something to see here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the pieces that when Americans go over, we see that, and our reaction is, we're going to do something, right? We got to and whereas I think folks there know that if they do anything, I mean, who knows what's going to happen to them? And this is just kind of way of life, right? I mean, I think there is, and just knowing that could happen at any time. I was there. I was one night. I went and took a walk, and for everybody, you feel totally safe walking around East Jerusalem. But I was on a walk late last night, and this guy was just driving, got pulled over and then 30 soldiers rushed his car, pulled him out. No one around. You could tell, it was like, this is just normal. This is because they can. They're going to just harass you. But watching that happen multiple times is just like, oh, and having to live in that. Anyway, so others, military connection that you saw, things you noticed.
Well, those experiences were re-triggering and traumatizing for me, especially with how things are done with persons of color in the South on a regular basis. And, driving while Black is such a crime, that kind of stuff. So all of that was very triggering for me. But one of the things that I noticed that just caused my whole spirit to be deflated was that there were military dressed individuals. And I think in conversation with Omar, there was told that every young person had to attend a year or so or something like that, be a part of the military. That's just how it is. That's everybody has to do it. But alongside them were individuals who were not military, dressed as military, and had like major
AK-47s. Yep.
Yeah. And all I could think in those moments were, if you just feel like shooting anybody, you just could.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no military code for that. There was room for just rogue folks to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when I'm thinking and seeing this action, I'm also now just kind of looking back at the States and how all of a sudden, anyone can be a part of ICE.
Mm-hmm.
That's right here, and how they can just be rogue. And so, that's all still very triggering for me.
Yeah. And young, right? We're looking at some of these soldiers and they're babies. I'm an old man, so I guess they're babies.
Right. And male and female. And so some of the, in my own attempt to soothe myself and pacify myself, I would talk to myself, but I was talking to the child or the person. So I saw this one young lady and I kept saying, "Girl, you too pretty for this. Why? Don't do this. You shouldn't be here. You're so pretty." I'm just whatever but it was helping me kind of calm down, because what else were we going to be able to do other than just witness it and see
you felt, when I go, it's like you have no power, right? When you're there, the power is completely theirs. And our passports in some places kind of protect us, but that's even getting less. But if you're a Palestinian, you just know that anything could happen and there's going to be no ramifications. And so you just are like, okay, this is because they can. Yeah. Jihyun, anything about you? Did you see a lot of military while you were there?
Yeah, I think, we saw folks who were right at the checkpoints, and then at the sort of encounter with a younger group of folks who were just passing through, doing shift change, right, standing at stations, and that sort of thing. But it was really, it was interesting because there were certain places where we went, and I guess maybe this was actually like a little glimmer of hope in the midst of all of it. But, the Palestinian guide, the driver who was with us would say, "Oh, it's a really good sign that person actually spoke Arabic to me," right? That military person actually spoke to me in Arabic and, had learned it, and instead of actually, making us speak Hebrew and stuff like that. And so like there were these individuals really, right, who are trying to connect across these real divisions, but really the rest of it really was, right, this really divided way of living, and young people actually conscripted, right, for mandatory service for, to try to enforce all of that, and really then forming them in that process. And also I think there were places where I thought, well, like there could be more life here, but I think because of the ways that you've actually set up these blockades and these, other physical barriers, not just people, but physical barriers as part of that sort of military way of being in this space, that actually created these places that were eerily quiet in places and really devoid of life. And that was also really striking, right? And then also watching then the police force, speaking, Cece, about some of the sort of parallels in terms of, and I think the ongoing conversation in our country about, right, are there ways in which the police actually see themselves as paramilitary units?
Yeah.
There was a huge traffic jam at one point wherever we were, and police apparently were there, not doing anything. But as soon as our driver made a turn because we were late for a meeting, but he had been in a center lane, but he had sort of done all the signaling and whatever, actually turned out of the middle lane to turn right to actually drop us off. And all of a sudden the police show up and then pull him over, give him a huge fine, but question him and detain him for a while. And he just tells us, like, you all go. And we're like, no, we don't feel okay leaving you here by yourself. And he was like, it's fine. You all should go. You're late for your meeting. And we're like, no, we feel that we should maybe remain here to be a witness to whatever is happening. And he's like, no, go. And we saw him the next day, and like he had been, given this huge fine, but they had been there not doing anything about the traffic. So clearly this isn't about, right, sort of order in that moment or actually like, right, aiding with civilian life. But they were really quick to pull over a taxi driver who was Palestinian, right? So
because they can, right?
Because they can, right? But they were not doing a public service by leaving us all stuck in that traffic jam when they could have done something.
Right.
Well, as we were in Hebron, as we were walking around to find a different checkpoint, we got stopped by soldiers and made to present our passports and our guide from Sabil, Omar, then looked down and saw that there was a bullet on the sidewalk, and then felt the need to make sure that the soldier knew that there was a bullet there and it wasn't ours. And his response was, "No, we have plenty of bullets." Just there was an edge of kind of humor, but there was also a tension to it. Like, this is how things get started. We walk away and then they say, "Oh, there's a bullet there," and it leads to something else. Like, just that sense of things can just be simple or they can get complicated really quick.
Yeah. And watching our Palestinian leaders interact was, I think, it was disconcerting. It was, discombobulating for Americans to watch this, because how we might do it or we expect them to react. I mean, that whole... Yeah, we were sitting at that checkpoint and Omar says, "Let's play Simon Says." Now, I was not going to play Simon Says, but he just had us play in the as they're basically reminding these folks that you do not get our humanity, right? We still, you're not winning this. And so I think there is that whole bullet on the ground thing was hysterical, but it was also like, you just knew it was also edgy because they had just got a call to check us out. Right. I mean, it was a very interesting kind of testimony. Let's talk about checkpoints. So what did you learn about them? What do you know about them? What would you tell people about them as you come back?
Don't lose your slip.
Okay, everybody, that was an inside joke because I lost my visa slip and got us in trouble because I didn't think they'd care, but they did. So anyway, yes, don't lose your slip if you go over there. Thank you, Cece. Yeah, I mean, you go through these checkpoints, whenever we're going to go on a day trip, we always tell people, go to the bathroom beforehand. This could be a 45-minute trip or it could be an 8-hour trip. And, it just doesn't matter. Experiences about checkpoints. Jihyun, did you have any?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of things. One direct, thing, and then an indirect. So the indirect sort of impact maybe of a checkpoint was really that the day that the presiding bishop was being installed, the parade was supposed to start at a particular time, and it kept getting later and later and later. And we found out that the presiding bishop's mother, the one who was about to be installed, his mother was detained because she was coming in with a delegation and the youth band from Beit Jala, and they decided to just hold her there for a really long time, even though there were all the official paperwork and everything. And so we were waiting for his mother and some really important people from his community to arrive to begin the procession. And so, that folks, you can set a schedule, but it doesn't run that way because people might get stuck, right? For these really important events that everybody knew was happening, was actually part of this, this church that's really quite well known, and for a leader who's well known in that community in Jerusalem, and it sounded like all the paperwork and everything had been filed beforehand, and everybody followed what they were supposed to do, and they still got detained, and his mother's not a young person, and so not somebody who's actually going to cause violence or any trouble, but was kept at a checkpoint. So that was one. I think another, just for us, the amount of time that that we had to think about, right? I mean, the driver had to think about which way to go, and the information that they're constantly holding and then calculating in their brain for like which way to go in order not to get stuck, to not get turned back at a checkpoint that's just randomly closed, even though it wasn't part of an official schedule or anything, but because of various and sundry reasons. And then how much then people had to sort of go the long way around, right, to get anywhere. And I mean, right, I mean, all of that is a cost, right, for life, and like an extra burden that folks are constantly carrying, right? Yeah.
And those checkpoints, for those of you that are, tracking, like checkpoints can shut down entire villages, right? And Palestinians get in trouble for opening those gates, but other people can open them. And then, I think one of our days, somebody just said, all the checkpoints in Bethlehem's been closed off. And so folks just can't get anywhere. And the point of all of that is just to control movement, right? Is to, again, because they can. Yeah. Other checkpoint reflections, either Tony or Cece?
Well, the reason that I was strip searched was because I had chosen to wear an adult diaper because I was uncertain after being told those checkpoints can go for anywhere from, 20 minutes to 2 to 3 hours. And so in my efforts to be a good Girl Scout, it also led to being strip searched. So...
Yeah, like it is that weird thing. Fear can save us sometimes, right? It can protect us, but then also sometimes the whole intent of this occupation is to instill fear and to live in fear. And so having to prepare for things, but then not prepare for things, but what's the safe level? I mean, that's just and that constant navigating and calculating that we just had to do for 10 days,
right?
And the signage, around these, it's illegal, right, for Jews to enter into this area, which is not signage that the Palestinians have put up, but is signage.
Right. It's dangerous for Israeli citizens to go in here at their own risk.
I mean, that kind of the thing, and and then trying to think about this context here, where so many neighborhoods now have gates on them, right, that people choose to live in these gated communities to sort of keep others out. But here folks are being forced to live in gated communities that are meant to gate them in, or to restrict their movement at will, and that ambiguity about who gets to decide, and do you ever get an explanation for why this is necessary, or is it just ongoing wearing you down?
Yeah. I got one more, and then I have to ask you to give a message to the church. So we hear a lot about, we see videos and everything about settlers, folks who have been at a variety of contexts, who are brought in to create settlements, homes in occupied territories. As we know, international law has said that these are illegal, but they continue to build, and there's walls being built up and all of those kind of things. What did you learn? What did you know? Were there misconceptions? What was your experience about learning about settlers while we were there?
When we were... Forgive me for not knowing the name of the place where we were, where one of the persons was murdered, right on the grounds. There was a caged tunnel, somewhat like a family. I watched a family walk from their home to this next place. They were settlers. They were sent to live in that home and as a family. And so it was, I'm maybe projecting, but I believe it was a father, his wife, father, mother, and a child. And they were walking through that area, and the Southern hospitality that I have grown to accept and love, where even if you don't like each other, you still throw up a hand and say, hey, that didn't happen. And there was this walking, and it was, for me, watching them deliberately not encounter others while walking through just set a very tense tone for me in that space. And so settlers seem to just walk in ownership.
Yes.
Just because I can, like you said earlier, because I can, but there's this sense of ownership, and that all of you who see me walking are just flies on the wall. You just happen to be where you can see me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just walking around the old city, right? You're a little more aware of people that aren't going to move for you. I mean,
Right.
Some of us are used to figuring that out in the States, but I think for some people that's not a norm, that people will move for them. But here you're like, oh, they're not moving. And you choose, right? You choose, are we bumping shoulders or am I moving out of the way?
Right.
Right. I mean, there's this, that ownership of the space is really intense. Yeah. Other settler experiences, things you learned, misconceptions or affirmations.
I've got one. I'm gonna get my prop for it though. I'll be right back.
There's a prop.
There's a prop.
I didn't tell people any prop. We are in video, and there's a fourth visitor. I don't know the name of our other guest who has taken comfort on the couch.
It's either John Calvin.
No, that dog is not named John Calvin, is it?
Yeah, the cat is Martin Luther. I think the dog is Martin Luther, and the cat is John Calvin, or vice versa.
Oh my gosh, no, Tony.
Yeah,
Tony. Well, I guess for those of you who don't know the four of us, if you had to guess whose pets were going to be named after theologians, it would be Tony.
It would be Tony.
Yeah, we love you, Tony. Anyway, so let me ask. While Tony's getting props, I am now super intrigued about what is going to happen in a moment. But where did you see liberation happening? Like, where did you see resistance and liberation? It was like, oh, this is happening right here, right now. Were there moments that you felt that?
The dancer. Dance as
Hannah.
Dance is resistant. Dance is resistance. And so he taught us a dance. So y'all know I was all in my own personal heaven with being taught a dance, right? Because line dancing is my thing. And so I was like, oh, I got this. And so
yeah.
All over that. But then he danced for us.
Yes.
And after being taught what some of the dance movements, how they were formed and how they developed and why they were what they were, like there was one move that he did with his hand that just kept dropping. And he said originally that was picking pomegranates.
Yeah.
And then it turned into throwing bombs.
Throwing rocks. Yeah.
Throwing rocks. And I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
What a change. But it was dance as resistance. And that was very powerful. Lots of art as resistance.
Yes.
That was really, really good to see. And then the one artist had a jump rope on the ground. It was a living piece of art, and it was a jump rope, and there was a cylinder block. And she said, let's play. But you couldn't turn the rope for jump roping because of the block that was sitting on it. And she talked about how that's what oppression is in space. And it was such a powerful piece that she just had outside. We were at the college thing.
Yeah. Tony, we were just talking about liberation moments. I'm going to let you do and then I'll get you back to Joan. What's your prop? Now we're super intrigued.
Well, so when we went to Taipei, this Christian city from really the origins of Christianity in the West Bank, and the same day we were there, Mike Huckabee decided to be there, and there was also a Roman Catholic delegation that was there, and there was all of this kind of conversation around, well, what do we do? Do we make some posters? Do we go and stand and jeer? And the response from the community was, no, please don't do that, because provoking that there'll be repercussions for us, right? After Mike Huckabee leaves, after you leave, the settlers will come through, and as they frequently do, and maybe it's start fires, maybe it's harass, but the threat of violence, right, at the end of the day when that international presence was gone. And so that went over pretty well with our group. The other delegation was there. They were still a little feisty. They wanted to do something, but they also, in the end, listened to the community there. And so, but just sort of sitting with that, knowing that was happening, and then the last thing we did there was we went to a distillery there, and so the thing that I brought back from that is hopeful, that is liberative, is we happened to be there on the day that the first bottle of single malt Palestinian whiskey was available for sale. And
That's
yes, right. And so that was my, there we go.
For those who don't know, I'm in the middle of moving. Otherwise, I could bust out my bottle too. The amount of weight we put in our luggage to bring back is kind of remarkable, because Jen, you did not get to do that on your delegation.
We did not.
But a story of somebody a couple who grew up there, who intentionally came back in order to build this business there, to do something that hadn't been done, and to do that as really an act of liberation and of hope, and to be able to be there while they're celebrating, and now have something to share with others, is to tell that story here at home.
Yeah, for sure. Jim, go ahead. What you were going to share something where you saw liberation.
Yeah. So two things, I think, sort of echoing, Cece, what you were saying, right? That art, design, architecture, right? Those things as right pathways for liberation, of spaces of liberation. I think Dar al Khalima University and that campus, I think when we stepped onto it, I think I felt it. I don't know that I've articulated it this way until this moment, that there was a different sense of lightness in that, on that campus and in that space, right? That had not been the experience of the rest of the trip. I think because that space of art as liberation, as hope, as resistance, as something bigger, a more enduring vision of something that is not yet. And there was something really joyful about that. And the collection there is amazing. I mean, the artists, the Palestinian artists who are contributing to that art space, art collection was just really, really amazing. And the work that they're doing, how they're getting recognized in different film festivals, telling the story, right, of this liberative story, and the narrative of hope and struggle, all of that, I think, was also really, really amazing. And then I think for me also, like, the spaces where we were able to break bread with one another. One of the organizations that we visited, Zugbi, who was one of the international peacemakers, right, sort of set out this really amazing spread for us. And it was really this joyous space of being able to break bread together and to share and the thing that sustains life, and to be able to actually share those stories and humanity with one another. And I felt like those were two places, right, I think, spaces where I felt like that liberation was happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Yeah, you all, I mean, I think that is for me, when you just are in spaces and they're reminding occupation that you do not get our humanity, like, and whether it's play or whether it's dance or and the subtlety of it all, you can feel it and you can just see it. But also there's this, like, I got to go on one delegation, we went to the circus, and I was like, why are we going to the circus? But it was just being humanity together, and you could just feel it in how they were training the young people and on what was happening. But yeah. All right. One last question for you. Any quotes, things you heard, something that's going to stick with you? Like, is there something that you heard, saw that this is going to be the thing that you take with you from your delegation, your time there?
For me, the House of Parables.
Explain that a little bit.
So on the property there, we were in Bethlehem, right?
Taipei.
That was in Taipei.
Yep.
While there, got a chance to visit the House of Parables, and there were customs that were strongly Palestinian customs, where these would have been the reactions of Palestinians during Jesus's time. And so we learned by walking into this home, all the parables, y'all, that we've been taught to imitate, and the story of Jesus's birth, and all in the inn, and there's no room in the inn. After the experience in that space and place, none of those sermons will ever be preached the same again.
Yep.
Tearing the roof off in order to lower the one at the foot of Christ. It was a skylight. It was already built in.
I mean, they were good friends, but, not as good as we want to say they were.
So, just all the parables, all the stories, the Christ stories, they're all, you will rewrite them with new eyes if you go and see for yourself. You will hear, see, feel the scriptures differently, having walked in those spaces and places. Like Tony said, when we went to go see Mary's tomb, there's no way.
What? Yeah. You mean the things didn't actually happen like everybody says they happened?
Oh my gosh. No, not at all. I had to sing the what is it? The Eye of the Tiger trying to come out of that tomb up the stairs in order to make it. I just and I'm taking off running and going up the steps because there was no way. It's just crazy. But worth every bit of it. And there was even a house of all nations.
Yeah.
And in the upper corner, one of the ninth corner or one of the corners of the ceiling of the church had the United States emblem.
Mm. Yeah.
And I just found that to be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Other folks, anything that is the thing that's going to stick with you from your time?
So I've shared this in a few spaces where I've been invited to talk a little bit about my experiences, including, Presbytery sort of mission committee meetings and things like that. But, when we were there, as we were asking about ways that we might be better partners and stand more effectively in solidarity and witness with our partners, the things that they were sort of pointing out were to remember that, yes, all rights speak up for Palestine and the suffering that's happening there and the occupation, and also do your democracy work, right? Because that's really important, right? And do your climate justice work, because that actually is standing in solidarity with Palestinian farmers who are having to figure out how to farm when they can only get to their land once a year, maybe, right? And are trying to think about sustainable farming and feeding people and, right, having enough to eat when climate change is happening and things are harder and harder to grow. One of the groups, the Israeli organization Hamoked, actually said, well, do you all have a policy on death penalty? I said, actually, we do. There's a church that regularly brings an overture about a moratorium on the death penalty to the General Assembly whenever it sort of times out. And and they said, please do that work, because when governments like the Israeli government is trying to put in to more normalize, right, death penalty as part of their justice system, they say, well, look at the U.S. The U.S. has death penalty. And so, that should then be allowable for us too, as a democracy. And so they were asking us to think broadly about solidarity, and not just, so if folks are wondering, what could we do? What is something that we can do, even if we can't travel over there, even if we can't actually, we don't know exactly how we might actually be in solidarity. There are lots of ways that we can, right? By doing that democracy work, by doing the work of climate justice, of doing other things that might relate more globally and impacts our Palestinian siblings.
All right. Great. Thanks. Tony, what about you? What's the thing that's sticking with you?
So I'll lift up these two things. One, that at least amongst the Palestinians that we talked with, they know who the Presbyterians are. They know who the PCUSA is. They know about our ongoing, sustained desire to be a partner there for peace, for solidarity, and for hope. And sometimes it feels like we're so far away, and in a time when it feels like we're doing a lot of managing institutional decline, and we're going, in other parts of the world, they're just really happy to know us and really glad for our partnership and friendship, and that's always encouraging to hear. The other question that I kept asking in various spaces was, what is the presence of the American church like here broadly? Is it helpful, and we were at the Lutheran Church in the Old City talking to somebody who works, is it with Amnesty? She just kind of rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, you Americans." you Americans and your need to continue to do this theological innovation. And I don't know what it is about you Americans, if it's just the vastness of your prairies or what it is, but we're here where Christianity started, where it's been from the beginning, and we're just tending. We're tending to the sites and the places, but we're also just tending to the people, doing the things, the caring for the least of these. And you are out there inventing these things like rapture theology, and that keeps coming back to me this week as, we're in the sixth day of this war, and at some level, military leadership are telling our soldiers that this is about provoking Armageddon. This is about the rapture and the return of Jesus, and just what work we have to do theologically in the church to try to engage that conversation in a way that might help us see how unhelpful that is to the people who actually live in that place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think mine on this particular last delegation, when we were at Al-Aqsa, we had a tour guide who didn't hold anything back, and it was great. Reminded me of how many people reminded us that we are already living in authoritarianism, and that they were worried about us. And it was just, you're not sliding into it. You're already there. And I think that many of us probably trick ourselves into thinking we're sliding into something, and no, that was the one. But he said this one thing. I remember telling you that when he said that this is the cemetery of empire. This is where empire comes to die. And I will never forget that this is where empire comes to die. And it was like, yep, that is what is happening. You can just feel the grasps of it. But yeah. All right. So thank you all. I'm going to shift gears a little bit as we kind of close out our time. Your last question is going to be an encouragement, a rant, or a comfort for the church. But one of the things on this podcast I like to do is to make sure that folks know that you are not just your positions, even though three of you are big shots right now. You're not just that, and you're not just people who got to do this thing, but you're humans, complex people. And I challenge people to one-dimensionalize us by sharing a little more about it. So I have my three little bits that I do on the show. The first one is the nerdy and the niche. So you have to share something that is super nerdy, or something that is so niche that people would not know about you. Like they'd be surprised to hear this about you. So, and just remember, this is going out for the world. So, just share appropriately. All right, Cece, you're up first. Nerdy and the niche. What you got?
Nerdy. I am still working on solving the Rubik's Cube with no
Still?
So, now, granted, I could always go online and find the solution and figure it out and work it out, but I have deliberately and on purpose not done.
Are you close?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I got one more layer to figure out the pattern to navigate.
So I don't know if you can tell personality. That'd be an interesting thing, personality by Rubik's Cube. So once I figured out how to just do one side of one color, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I did not need to figure out the other sides. I'm like, I could do one. That feels good enough.
Yeah.
I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, if anybody wants to guess.
I've been working on it since 6th grade. So.
Oh my gosh. That is perseverance. You persisted. Yes. That's great. Tony, nerdy in the niche. What do you got?
The nerdy. Well, I'll just say that my my Pokemon Go game is suffering mightily during this year and a half of serving. Occasionally, I get to pick up cool new Pokestops and airports and the places I visit, but most of the time, I'm just too busy to even open it up. And so I just
sacrifices moderators make for the church.
I just miss playing the Kalos tour. So that's the nerdy. On the niche side, something you wouldn't necessarily know about me is the very first wedding that I officiated as a pastor became the subject of an episode of Dateline, a small part of an episode of Dateline.
What?
Yeah. So if you run into me out and about in the church and we have 30 or 35 minutes and something to drink, I'll be happy to tell you that story in full.
I'm intrigued now. I'm going to send you an email later.
There's also a book that covers it, Death on Diamond Mountain. So,
yeah.
Documentary coming out 2026.
There probably is a documentary at this point, but it's quite the story.
The things you learn is on this show. All right, Jen, nerdy or niche?
Nerdy, I guess. So I mean, I guess this has been a while, but I still have this impulse. So when I was in seminary at Columbia, I think maybe it was like the middler year or something. I actually ran around to like the former engineers and scientists on campus and said, "Do y'all want to like start a calculus solving group, like a problem solving group?" And people were like,
gracious.
I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that, but why do you want to do it? And I said, don't you all get tired sometimes of not ever doing anything that has a firm answer? Because we write papers like for our projects.
So you turned to calculus to do that?
I said, at least if we're solving calculus problems, we'll actually come up with like a real answer, right? And a concrete answer.
Okay, you're not helping with the model minority myth there, Jen. I failed calculus. I took one for the team, so not people wouldn't all think that all Asians were good at calculus. I did that on purpose. I'm sure that's why I did it.
I have some cousins who would actually agree with you. Yeah.
How long did this? This is hysterical. You had a calculus club, basically. No, so how long did this go on?
There was never really a good enough like sort of group there to actually do it. But like I was serious for a while. Like I was like, I really need to like start a group. And like now every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I wonder if I should actually do some math.
That'd have been a hard, firm no for me. I don't know about the other two of you, if you would have been.
No, that would have been, I would have probably been right in the class.
That's right.
Right there. Yeah. That math was, that would have been something I would have just jumped right on. Like, oh, yeah.
Let's try that. Nope.
I would have loved it.
Yeah. I went into Enterprise one time to rent a car for one of these monitorial events, and somebody had an equation on the board in the back, and they were solving it. And I kept staring at it. And I kept saying, no, that goes there. That goes there. And the lady said, ma'am, what are you talking about? Whose work is that?
For those of you that don't know, Cece was a teacher. And did you teach math?
I taught mathematics. Yeah. High school mathematics.
Nerds. Love my nerds friends. I love my nerd friends, but good Lord. While you were gone, Tony, we're also teasing about your nerddom churchiness and your pets.
Yeah.
And that if any of the four of us were going to name our pets after old dead white theologians, it was going to be Tony.
Yeah. Martin Luther is just chilling back here. John Calvin probably won't wander in tonight.
I love it. Okay. All right. Your next thing is sights and sounds. So what are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you reading? You can do all of them. You can one of them. Just what's going on in your, and well, Tony, you're first. What are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you reading?
All right. So let's see. We've just been, when I'm home, we try to watch something. So the last few things we watched, got caught up on Landman. Currently we're watching Pluribus, which is, kind of wild, and then for a lighter note, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and then we did finally take the plunge into K-pop Demon Hunters, and so I've been listening to some K-pop and reading How to Hide an Empire.
Oh, move there you go, from Demon Hunters to How to Hide an Empire. Okay, awesome. June, what are you listening to? Watching? What are you reading?
Yeah, so watching Percy Jackson also.
Oh my gosh.
Also, Lincoln Lawyer.
Oh, yes. That's some good brain candy right there.
Yeah, so good. And also reading Decolonizing
Palestine.
Yes, Decolonizing Palestine. And I was like, it is Decolonizing Palestine.
So
right?
For those of you who don't know, we are re-recording this. We started at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So the three of them are all on East Coast time. So I'm like bubbly and I'm ready to go. And I'm looking at they're like, can we end this now? Because I'm getting sleepy. All right, Cece, watching, listening to, reading.
So kind of sort of falling back in love with Fantasia. The Disney. Because classical music has been my calm here lately. Music without words to just kind of make it. Because the prep time for all the things that we get to do has dwindled down to none. And so having to rely on my own thought of what do I remember from some other experience has been interesting. But then if I do get a chance to fall asleep in front of the TV, it's because NCIS is on continuous.
No NCIS.
I love NCIS. Yeah. The propaganda is it's terrible, but I also love it. I love NCIS. Yes.
I really like New Orleans, that particular one. That's my favorite. But but I'll take the regular NCIS.
Everybody's so pretty. I just like watching pretty people on TV. That's basically, I'm just gonna own it. I'm like, is everybody beautiful? Sure. I'll just watch that. Yeah. I'll tell you. So what I'm listening to right now is I have fallen in love with the new Bruno Mars album. Oh my God. That thing is on repeat.
Really?
It is cranked up. It is everything you want from Bruno Mars. It is great. Yeah. What I'm going to start reading, I'm going on a trip tomorrow. I got the new book by Francesca Albanese, who's from the UN. And so I'm going to start reading that. And then what are we watching? We subscribe to BritBox TV. And so we are watching all these like Return to Paradise. I don't know why English TV is so much better. I don't know why. But anyway, so that's what we're watching. I'm trying to think if there's any Brain Candy I've been watching. I don't think so. And Night Agent. That's the one I've been watching on the side.
I have not seen the new season.
Yeah, it's all excellent. Anyway, all right. Your last thing before I let you all go is this: the listeners for the church. What's your encouragement, your rant, or your comfort?
Well, my encouragement, which is also a part of my rant, and in a sense offers some comfort. So it's all of them. Train your replacement. You are not going to be here always. You will never outlast the legacy you want to leave behind. The legacy that you need to leave behind has to be placed in the hands of someone who can do something with it. So you have to train your replacement, or else whatever legacy you thought you were going to leave, it will die and be buried with you. So please, by all means, train your replacement. Quit thinking that you are the only individual capable of doing whatever gift, call, job, responsibility you have. As a session member, as a leader, ecclesiastical leader, as whatever you are, train your replacement. Please train them, and then let them flourish in the gifts that they have so that things can be made better.
Amen. All right. Tony, comfort, encouragement, or rant? Or all three?
Or all three. Well, so if I had to rant, it would be I wish we Presbyterians would stop pointing out how much smaller we are and making that the first thing we say about ourselves. Because to tie it back to this trip, it's clear that who we are as this flavor of the at least 36 flavors of Christianity is important, and we're peculiar, we're quirky, we're not everybody's favorite flavor, but the ways that we show up in the world really matter, and the work that we're doing does have impact, and when we stop being beholden to the image of what we once were and start focusing on who God is calling us to be and where the Spirit is leading us, I see amazing things happening all the time. And so that's the encouragement. Pay attention to the way that the Spirit is calling you in the particular place that you have been placed in the church, and follow that with boldness, and we can write new stories. We can dream new dreams with God. And my comfort is that leaders like the four of us, that I get to serve with leaders like the three of you, and the leaders that I run into in our mid councils and in congregations, that we have just such phenomenal, gifted people in the church, including these three conversation partners tonight, and that gives me great comfort.
Great. All right, Jen.
Yeah, I think sort of echoing some of what's been said already. I think in this time, in the last few weeks, I've had conversations with people who say, for this particular age that we're living in, it almost feels like the Presbyterian Church was sort of made for this time. And this was in conversation about training AI models. We have so much documentation that we could really easily train a lot of AI models to be helpful for us, right? And somebody said that in a conversation. In a time where there's authoritarianism and populism sort of burgeoning, that our way of governing and our way of being together as a covenant community, I think is a really needed witness. And I think the way that we have talked about who God is for us and for the world and what God is doing in the world, I think is such an important witness. And so I think echoing Tony, if we can stop being so sad about looking back and really, dealing with our grief, but then also being able to look forward with hope. I think there are so many amazing things that can happen, and that there's something really good about what we can be as part of a larger body of Christ in the world. And I think the other part of it, right, is recognizing, and I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say this, right, recognizing that not everybody in the denomination agrees, right? We still have a wide variety of things that people actually believe and think and feel about a whole lot of different issues. And at the same time, the reason why, right, we also rely on General Assembly policy is because a council does get together to discern and say what it is that our witness should be in the world. And so I also encourage people to actually get to know the policies of the denomination if you're Presbyterian, right? Or if you're interested. Get to know our policies. It has some really, really important things about freedom of conscience and religious liberty and the ways that we actually come to sort of believe who God is, for human rights, for, in the context of this conversation about Palestine and Israel and what we think is really, right, sort of a pathway forward for God's wholeness in the world, for what it looks like to have honest patriotism in this time. What we believe about, right, how we need to actually stand firmly against Christian Zionism and also white Christian nationalism, all these different things that we have policies and I think opportunities and learning documents about it. So I encourage people to get to know that.
Thank you. This is probably the most Presbyterian podcast I'm ever going to do of episodes. So just if anybody's listening to this who normally doesn't get this stuff, don't worry. This is just the only 2 episodes that will get this. Let's see. My rant will be. I'm going to end with a rant. I am still pissed off at churches that talk about being with the oppressed and the poor and all the things. And I'm like, if you're not doing that right now, if you are not doing what you have said you are, if you're not being the church that you've been saying you are, that you say in your prayers and your songs and your sermons, I don't know what you're doing. But now's the time that's a choice not to be the church that you have been saying you are. And so do it. Like, just, you got to be the church. Now, if you've been saying all this time you don't care about the poor and you don't want to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and visit the incarcerated, and then that's fine. But if you have been saying all that stuff, you need to get out there and do it. So there's my rant for you. All right, all. Again, we want to thank Presbyterian Peace Fellowship and Palestine Justice Network for helping to sponsor these 2 episodes, but also those are the places we can get resources. They'll be in the show notes. We'll give you links, and I would encourage you to join their newsletters, give them money, use their resources. There's all kinds of great stuff, especially around Palestine. Palestine Justice Network has everything you're ever going to need. If you wanted to have your congregations do any kind of study, if you want to just kind of get to know a little bit more, because you may feel silly asking, that's the place to go. So you want to make sure you take advantage of the resources they offer. So again, I want to thank the 3 of you for staying up late with me today. For those of you that are listening, you know what to do. Rate, review, do all the things you do with podcasts. And thanks for joining me on Amalgamation. We'll see you next time. This podcast was hosted by Bruce Reyes-Chow, produced by Emmy Hicks, edited by Desiree McFarland, with music by Marissa Magdal-Laron, and inspired by ancestors past and generations to come. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe to the Amalgamation newsletter at Reyes-Chow.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.